Hey rail fans, and welcome to another one of my streams and another look at some of the BR heavy freight stuff today. This time pulling 18 TEA tanker wagons from the Leeds end to the Manchester end with two class 40s pulling it along this time. So let's just get jumping straight in here. Let's make the magic happen. Or something. Many loading screens later. Many loading screens. Okay, so we start sitting at a red signal at Leeds. We have to wait for this train over here to clear the block before we can go anywhere. So, little bit of setup work first. Because inexplicably, we've shut the train down completely for a mere red signal. So, master key to on, and first thing to do is switch your brakes from air brake passenger to air brakes for goods. And let's just dosh down the back quickly. Not actually certain if these rear lights need to be on. I've got conflicting information about whether these would or would not have been on. So, seeing as we've got a bit of time though, finding the right click spot can be a pain in the arse sometimes. And just for the sake of visibility more than anything else. No real neat reason to do it, but I'm going to open up the head code discs just because they're there. So why not? The way I see it, an 1800 ton train, you can't have too many lights at the front of it to warn people that there's a sodden great big train heading towards them. So we'll put all the markers on this time, as well as the instrument lights. Pop the visor back up. I'm going to apply the locomotive brake and release the train brake. And I'm going to watch this needle here as it charges the brakes. This brake gauge will stay fully on because the locomotive brake's also displaying via that one. And let's just get the reverser set. That train's just crawling out the station in front of us now, and I'm expecting this to turn yellow very shortly. Let's just have a quick look outside at the train itself. So, a couple of class 40s, pulling 18 TEA wagons at about over 100 tons each, potentially, in those wagons. So there we've got the yellow signal. The train brake should be easily released by now, so we'll just release the locomotive brake. And we'll put some power on. And very gradually we start rolling forward. It's 10 miles an hour to begin with is the speed limit, and just make sure you keep the amperage meter needle to the left of that red line. So the shunt signal ahead's clear, so nothing to worry about there, and we'll just hold that speed till we're out of the 10-mile-an-hour area around the station. So the white shunt signals will show you the direction you're going in through all these different sets of points. The 101 coming in. It's back at 9 in the morning game time, so there should be a fair amount of traffic around. Hey Tommy, how are you? Welcome, mate. Good, man. Had a bit of spare time on my hands today, so thought, yeah, we'll do some train driving. So I'm not going to. You've got to watch for these yellows on the way out, because we're following a passenger train out of this the area. There could be some yellows ahead. But when you measure your braking distance in miles, you kind of have to think about it a little bit. So I can't quite see the next signal yet, so I'm not going to put any power on. In fact, I'm going to lean out the window, maybe get a better view. Nope. I can see the signal ahead, but I can't see what colour my signal is. I don't think it's red though. That's another yellow, it's fine. So we'll give it a little bit of power, because this corner will try and slow us down with the friction. Ah, green, perfect. And decided to open all the head code discs up for this one for no reason other than just because. He's just coasting along there. He wasn't on his. They sound pretty cool when they go past on the power, but of course he'll be slowing down for the junctions, going across the junctions into Leeds there. So there's no need to absolutely whack it on just yet, because we've got another couple of junctions to go across just before we hit that 60. Pick it up a little. Takes a very long time for this train to gain speed on any kind of incline, and there are parts of parts of this line where you won't get it above about 30-35 due to the steep gradients. Plenty of parts where you will get it up to close enough to line speed though. Let's just get the locals clear of the junctions, and we all know what's coming next, I think. So it is on a gradient here, so even impressive as that sounds, we're kind of going to be just struggling up this next wee section here. Not much I can really do. There's 1,800 and something tons of oil in them there tanks behind us. And we've only got about 4,000 horsepower to pull it all up this hill with. The Class 40 looks like a beast, sounds like a beast, is a little bit shite and wheezy when it has too much behind it though. It's still brilliant fun to drive though. Brilliant add-on. And it looks good and it sounds good, and that is all that matters. So we are picking it up to about 30 now. But not that far to the Morley tunnel. And we should get up to around full speed by the time we reach the far end of that. Then a fairly fast run, expected a fairly fast run as far as, at least as far as Ravensthorpe. We might hit a yellow signal if that passenger train ahead of us was stopping at Dewsbury or Bately. It was a proper long distance train though, it wasn't a 101, so it won't be stopping it everywhere, it'll be only at the principals I would think. And once we get to about Ravensthorpe it'll no longer be an issue. The stretch between Ravensthorpe and Heaton Lodge has a separate goods line which we'll go on to for a bit. But you do have to be careful of that, and this is a service where your route knowledge really gets tested a wee bit. It's also a perfect example of why it would be really, really useful if Dovetail gave us a bit more information about what to expect. I'll talk a little bit more about it when we approach Thornhill Junction and Ravensthorpe. And yes, I do have a route map open nearby. I don't know all these places off by heart yet. The real drivers would have. Drivers would be expected to know every inch of the line, but I still rely on having maps and things nearby. So it'll just chunter along nicely, slowly picking up speed up this hill. So I've got yeah, that passenger train ahead of us may have stopped somewhere down the line. Okay, so it's nearly 2 miles to the next station, the next signal, which in fact is the signal beyond the platform at Morley. So that train has at least left Morley, if I'm being allowed to go as far as the platform. So I'm going to proceed at speed just now, because it's not that fast anyway, and I'll just be careful to make sure I've reduced my speed appropriately in time for the signal at Morley. So we're doing about 35 now. The braking distances are enormous on this thing. So actually with about a mile to run to that signal, over a mile to run, I'm cutting the throttle. I'm getting ready to apply some gentle brakes. What I'm going to be aiming to do is to arrive at the station somewhere around 20 mile an hour. You do it all well in advance with these big heavy trains, otherwise you get into all sorts of trouble and you end up either speeding or stopping when you didn't intend to, because it also takes a long time to release the brakes. So do everything miles in advance on these trains. So the uphill gradient is actually slowing us down quite nicely, so I'll carry the power a bit further. "25 miles an hour is too fast to stop within visual distance of this thing though. You need to be down to about 20 or so to be sure that you're going to stop if need be. The odds are I will be allowed to just carry on straight through, because by the time I get to the next signal, the train ahead should have moved on to the next signalling block beyond Ravensthorpe. Dewsbury, sorry. Or approaching Dewsbury even. Right, so coming up to half a mile to run. It's just Aye, Super Sprinter, welcome mate, good to see you. I've not actually played with the 101 or the 47 at any length yet. That might be the next thing I look at. So I just need to pay a bit of attention here. Oh, I'm still on local brakes as well. A little bit of train brake just to try and bring it down to something sensible as we come into sight of the station ahead. Very, very, very slow to take effect. The uphill slope's doing more of that than the brakes are at this stage. So I can see the signal box. Cannot see the signal yet, but I can see the signal box. Check that the brakes are coming off properly. Now there is an advanced signal here, because the signal itself is at the end of the platform round the corner, but there is one of these kind of, I can't remember what the proper name for them is. This thing here on the black and white pole, as soon as I get close enough to make out the detail on it, which is often when you see the signal itself anyway, but never mind, at least they're trying. Okay, I can see that the black bar at the top is diagonal, so if that black bar there, just where the cursor is, you see at the top of this mast, the black bar is horizontal, it means the signal ahead is at stop. If it's raised and looks like a national speed limit sign, it means that it's at caution or clear. Either way, you're good to go. You usually find that ahead of signals like this that are hidden around corners. So now I know that the signal's clear, we can open up again. And just remember as we're going into the tunnel, oh, now there's something that you can do for the first time with the 40. This thing here, rear horn, you can use in conjunction with your left stick to actually do a proper twin tone horn. It's kind of cool. So yeah, there's that. I like that. Totally forgot to talk about that yesterday. Sheer habit, I still just reach for the keyboard though. So this is the second longest tunnel on the route. It's about 4,000 yards or some such. It's fairly level though, so the speed is picking up a bit. Have I got a gauge dimmer in here somewhere? Yeah, not going to start clicking on stuff when there's engine switches over there. I can still see them fine. Go fasten 30. Just check that we are at full throttle. Tunnels are way better in this now as well. Absolutely love them. They were almost immersion braking before with all that weird stuff going on inside them. So the next signal is, I think, just beyond the end of the tunnel, so that's a good indicator for how far we've got to go. We're still accelerating. I think we're on a level stretch of track now as well, so picking it up nicely. Now, as we leave the Morley tunnel, we'll have a few miles still to run. We've got Batley and, is it Batley or Batley? And Dewsbury to pass through yet. But we have to be careful approaching the junction at Ravensthorpe and Thornhill. Because there's some secret hidden speed limits there. Well, they're not secret, but if you're relying on the little display up here, or the wee floaty bubble on the track to tell you what the speed limits are, it's just a case of you're going to come up against 2 or 3 changing very quickly. And if you don't know that they're coming, you will never ever make the last one in this train at all, ever. What you will do is quite likely derail at the junction, because I've done it. So we're about to break out of the tunnel now. And I can see the green signal from here, so I'm okay. I'm just trying to do a complete run by of the set. So there's the way back in the distance at the top of the screen there. The front is just going around the corner now. That was cool. So nearly up to 60 miles an hour. I'm going to take the power off. Just check that I've got the train brake engaged. And we're reducing to 50 miles an hour, I think for the station at Batley, that is, and we're actually picking up a little bit of speed going down this gradient, so I'm going to feed it a little bit of brake. With the air brakes, it's this gauge down in the bottom right that's the important one. And it's not really doing very much, so I'm going to give it about half brakes, and it's going to do a lot less than you think. And that mile's going to pass a lot faster than you think as well, so you need to be way ahead of this thing. Oh, thank you, Tommy. That's really nice of you to say. I appreciate that, man. Thank you. What a nice thing to say about somebody who is basically just sitting talking to themselves. Okay, so we're just coming down to that 50 now, and I'm going to keep the brakes on and reduce a bit further. In fact, I'll let them out just now, because I might have a bit further to go than I think. So, signals are clear, and the distance is clear as well, nothing to worry about there. I think we're okay for speed just now, actually. It's a little bit closer to the junction we need to worry. You'll see as well when you release the brakes that sometimes the gauges take ages and ages and ages to go back to zero fully. That's because the brake system operates from the locomotive. When you put the brakes on, the pressure is being measured from this end. So the brakes up here come on first, and then the pressure makes its way down the length of the train. When you release the brakes, the pressure is released at the locomotive end first, and those needles will drop all the way down to about 10 or so, and then they'll take ages while the rest of the train releases its brakes. So what that basically means during that sort of few seconds or few tens of seconds where the needles are sitting around 10 is that the brakes are still making their way off all the way down the train, and the longer you've had the brakes on for, the longer that will usually take to happen, because it takes time anyway for them to all come on. So if you just give it a dab like that, that wave of brake pressure hasn't had time to travel the length of the train yet behind us, so they come off fairly quickly. Now the reason that I've not gone back up to 60 again is because just around this corner is a junction. We are approaching Ravensthorpe, and once we pass Ravensthorpe we go across a junction which normally is 45 miles an hour for passenger trains. Now if you're following these speed guides, you'll meet that fine in most of the passenger trains, like these things up, you know, the distance to the speed limit guide. I call it the speed guide. Or if you have the floaty bubble thing, you'll know where the 55 is. Not a problem. You'll even know where the 45 beyond it is. Again, no problem. I've left this too late, by the way, which is why I'm now sort of panic braking. So you see how long the brakes are taking to come on here. We're still doing the best part of 35 miles an hour. Now I'm going to release these at about 25 to 30 because of the time it takes them to come off. So now we've got the 45 sign posted. Again, fine, you would be alright, probably be alright if you were panic braking here. Now I might actually end up coming to an accidental halt because I've had the brakes on a little longer than I intended to. Now, what we've never seen before until we had freight trains, if I remember rightly, was going across onto the goods line. Now you see it's taking so long for the brakes to come off, even though I released them at 25 miles an hour, I am going to be stopping. I should have been braking much earlier than I was. you need to really be braking more or less continually from the point where you enter that initial where the speed limit actually becomes 60 is where you should start braking for this. So I've not quite come to a halt. The brakes have released themselves. And watch as we enter the 45. And the yellow signpost there is where it starts. Immediately, it's 20 is the next one. Now, if you cross that line doing 45 miles per hour in an 1800 ton train, you're not going to be doing 20 miles an hour 100 yards later. Ever. In any universe. What will happen if you've got your derailment switched on is you will end up that embankment somewhere. And then once we're on to the goods up, we'll just let the locomotives clear. And we'll just get a wee shifty on, I think. For some reason, sadly, you don't always get the smoke effects out of the second loco after a little while. You get them at the very beginning, but they seem to come and go after that for some reason. Which is a shame. Ah, there's what I was looking for, the instrument dimmer. So hopefully that'll be a little clearer in the next set of tunnels. So if you see the amp meter needle start to bounce around from side to side all of a sudden, I think that's usually that's wheel slip. It can occasionally cause you to have a spike and shuts everything down, but if you're paying attention, we all know how much attention I always pay, yeah? If you're paying attention, you should be able to manage that quite easily. So we're picking up speed at a steady rate. So it's what is very easy to do in this train. One thing I have done more than once with the heavy freight trains is you think, oh, that is climbing really slowly, don't need to keep too close an eye on it, and then the next thing you know, you're going much faster than you should be with a massive slowdown ahead of you. What we'll probably do is if the speed does approach 50, we'll just cap it there if we can. The tiny little bit of time you might gain from sometimes going a bit faster, if you're going to have to get straight on the brakes again, you may well end up losing all that advantage anyway, so... Right, so couldn't remember the name of the station, Murfield. So a mile to run to the 45, to the 50, sorry, and we're doing 45. So, yeah, you're unlikely to hit many of the speed limits in this thing. So there's my amp meter bounced up all of a sudden out of the blue. We'll just let the power out a bit. That's pretty cool that you get wheel slip though. It forces you to pay even more attention to what's going on. So I'm just going to let the power out here because we're going down a little hill briefly. We do slow down initially because the TEAs are still coming up that hill, so letting it off there just, it all kind of balances itself out through this section. And then the gradient changes from a downward gradient to an upward one. Again, if I remember correctly, just where the speed limit changes. Now we are approaching Huddersfield shortly as well, so we need to be aware of speed limits and things around there. The main hazard approaching Huddersfield is that the speed limit in the station is 15, and that speed limit is immediately behind a 40 mile an hour one. So you'll get the warning telling you slow down to 40. There it is there. And again, you can very, very, very easily find yourself flying into that station with way too much speed on. We may get a signal as well actually slowing us down, depending on what the traffic's like around Huddersfield at the moment. I have seen some of the services I've done on my other profile, sometimes you get signals on the way and sometimes you don't. I've been stood in a station when one of these things has come through before, many years ago. It was impressive. So with a mile to run, I'm just going to pop some light braking on just now. because I can't remember the exact sequence of gradients on the way into the station. Right, losing speed pretty sharpish. With practice, you'd be able to do this much more smoothly and do it a bit later, but while you're still getting the hang of the brakes on this thing, do it earlier and then build yourself up. Let your balls get a little bigger each time you do it. You should certainly, if certainly by this signal here, you need to be at 40 miles per hour and decelerating further. This is like the second last one you see, I think, before you're into the station properly. We'll just put a little bit of power on, just to keep our momentum more than anything else. So I am going a bit more slowly than I needed to be there, but I'd prefer that. So where it now says we've got a 40, immediately beyond that, I think it's like 150 yards or something like that, you need to be down to 15. So, another one where don't rely on the HUD information alone. So yeah, I could have done this a lot quicker. Practice it in the loaded trains first as opposed to the heavy trains. In fact, there's some empties as well that you can play with, so you can build up to doing the heavy one via the empty ones first, then the loaded single header before moving on to this thing, because this is a completely different beastie. So just popping the first application in a little bit. Now, once we cross this bridge, I think we do roll downhill slightly. Let's see. So we're actually this is where it gets tricky. Is even just a dab of the brakes at low speed can have a quite big effect, whereas tons of brake at high speed has bugger all effect. And it just, yeah, it takes a lot of playing with it to get the hang of it. A lot of practice needed, but that's good. That's cool. This will keep me entertained for a long time. Let's just put a wee bit more power in. I have been far too cautious this time. The trick is essentially, once you've got the hang of the brakes, is you want to arrive at this 40 miles per hour limit. You want to arrive at this basically doing 15. Although we should be cleared just straight through the station. So there you go, straight into the 40, and you've got 100 yards on a downhill, slight downhill slope to contain that. And again, if you've got your derailments and things turned on, very real risk of that across all these points. This is actually one of the trickiest bits to do, just this slowing down and rolling on through it without losing as much time as I did there. I've actually done this much more smoothly on my main profile, but as always, I start blethering away and I can't concentrate on two things at once. We're just going straight on through it. And it's reasonably straightforward after this. It's the long painful climb to Staley Bridge and then a nice easy downhill to Manchester from there. So the speed limit has gone up, but we're just letting the rear of the train roll through the station. Taking a rough guess at it, I'm probably a bit early, but not to worry. I don't think this is a particularly long tunnel. It's not. We've still got the Standage tunnel to come, which is 5,500 yards or something like that. That's a bit further up the line yet, though. So this is the start of the uphill climb to Staley Bridge. So I've got no worries about. I better check what the signal is, though, mind you. I've no worries about outside cameras for the next wee while. Because there's no way we're getting up to 65 on the uphill to Staley Bridge, ever. It's not a stress thing really, man, it's just I can't concentrate on two things at once. Unless it involves balancing on a laptop on one knee one-handed, but apart from that I can't concentrate on two things at once. I just make mistakes, but hey, it's all good. I make the mistakes. Other people don't have to, or something. I don't know. Learn from my fuck-ups, basically. Hell, the only reason the reason I started doing these was simply because I felt that Dovetail didn't really give enough information in the game about a lot of the stuff that they put in the game, and it is something I know a wee thing or two about. So in a funny sort of way, making all these mistakes is almost entirely what I'm supposed to be doing, so there. I'm not entirely sure how any of that logic holds up, but we'll not worry about it on a Sunday morning. So we're still only doing 25, and we're not going to be going a great deal faster for the next wee while. It's pretty much uphill for quite a lot of the way. I think at least as far as Marsden, I think, is uphill, and then it's level through the Standage Tunnel. But once you go through the Standage Tunnel, I think you've done most of the climbing, so it's all good. And I can see a green signal, so let's have a run by, I think. $18 of them, I think, we're pulling. And since I last looked at the speedometer, I think we've gained an entire 1 mile an hour. Oh, we've got the smoke back from the second loco. Awesome. Let's see if we can make some black smoke. You wouldn't do this in real life, I don't think, but yeah. That just never gets old. Let's do it again. I'm just waiting for the bang and the pop as I overload something. Right. Should probably pay a bit more attention to what I'm doing. We know how this ends if I don't. So I am cheating a wee bit, and I'm using a USB keyboard to do these camera changes. What the hell is outside drivers? I take it that's outside left and outside right. That would be useful if they were labelled such. So yeah, you can do the camera changes from the menus, or you can cheat a little bit. Now here's a thing worth noticing: if you've got the little bubble showing you where the next signal is, or this thing here, it would show you the signal's a mile away. But lo and behold, what's this I see before me? Tis a signal. So they're not all accounted for up here. Be wary of that. It tends to be the distant signals that are not showing up there, but you do have to be careful of them, especially if you're not using the aspect indicator, so you don't know what colour it's actually set to. Hi Neo Gunlock, welcome, thank you. Good to see you here. Green ones might not like it. Well, no, they probably wouldn't, but happily it's just pretend they smoke. I also managed to give away about 5 miles an hour in speed doing all that. That's possibly a game I should play with the on the downhill sections. And all the head code discs open. I'll go back to them in a second once I've seen what the signal up ahead is. So, where is it? Where is it? Oh, you can't always see them very clearly from a distance. Yeah, I think we've got green. Yes, we definitely have green. So, the head code discs, for anyone that hasn't seen this yet, you get a camera close enough, they're flippable, you can open them up. Normally by the 1980s it would just be the lower two left and right ones that would be used. These are from the old days, but you can still use them, and why not? Yeah, they're definitely a wee change of pace, Neo Gunlock. I used to play games like this on the PC years ago, so I'm really happy to see them finally coming to the PlayStation. And I think it's absolutely great that there's all these new players finding these things for the first time, because they can be quite good fun. Oh, I've still got that camera in a terrible place. That's what we wanted. Let me just check what we've got coming up ahead. So that was Slaithwaite, I think. Right, so next section still mostly uphill to Marsden, then it levels out as we go through the Standage Tunnel. And I don't think there's that many really bad climbs after that. I think from there it is more or less downhill all the way. Oh, come on! It does feel really slow after a while up here. Oh, you're welcome, man. I hope you enjoy it when you do get it. It's definitely it's a very relaxing experience. Now, who knows, we might even get, we've had German routes, we might get some Dutch routes as well at some point in the future. They have said that they want to expand into more places. That'd be kind of cool. We'd love a French route. TGV, maybe? Oh, yes, please. I think we might be a wee bit away from getting anything like that, though. Well, the thing is there is a third-party content creator coming out for the game as well, and I don't know how it's going to work with consoles. But in theory, I mean, even if the creator only works on PC, you should be able to make the content playable on the console, because Bethesda have already done that with mods from Skyrim and stuff. Once that content kit is available, then I think it's going to maybe get a bit like Train Simulator 19 on the PC, where you get hundreds of routes, of which Dovetail have maybe only made about 10% of them. Routes from all over Europe and all over the world available for Train Sim. So it's entirely possible that, admittedly a few years from now, but it's entirely possible that Train Sim World will end up with just as much variety. I mean, there was bugger all available for Railworks when it first launched 10 years ago, and that's the game that is now Train Sim 19. It took them a long time to get there, but yeah, I don't see why there won't be tons and tons and tons of stuff available for this game in the long term. And there is a very active community in the PC side of train simulators. There are a few groups who do nothing but make routes and trains from the Netherlands. You find in most countries there's a wee group of enthusiasts or small commercial operators who specialise in their own region. I'm not going to lie, I'm sorely tempted to think about investing in a PC. I've kind of rediscovered my love of train simulators through the PlayStation 4 game, but it's made me hungry for more. Because I remember what they were like. I used to have them all of them. Not all the routes, but I used to have quite a lot of simulators of different types, and yeah. But we're getting way off topic here. So, still got greens ahead. You do have to sort of keep an eye out for signals, especially the ones that are not marked, just because of the size and weight of this thing. Not such a big issue on the uphill climb out though. So when you start hitting the signals when you're on a 1.5% downward gradient, then you realise it's going to be the best part of a mile before the brakes even have a noticeable effect. It gets interesting. And yeah, if you whap these on at full power on a 1800 ton train going down a 1% gradient, it is the best part of a mile before you even notice that the brakes are on. Alright, so we're about to enter the Standage Tunnel, where the gradient will flatten out, and we'll be able to go for it. Not sure how long the train is actually in yards. I've not done anything to try and measure that. So 18, call them, they'll be what, about 20 yards each, so it's about 360 yards long-ish. I don't know what that is in meters though. I know that the longest freight trains on the German routes are over half a kilometre. Those big car transporters are the best part is 600 metres long. Let me get my phone out and do a quick yard to meters thing here. Timer, go away. ...330 metres, right, so about half the length of the longest train in the game that I've driven, but easily the heaviest, I think. Maybe those big coal trains that the BR55 pulls, or the 155 pulls. I've not actually done that. I've never run it in reverse to try and brake. I just always assumed that would do some severe damage to it. The local brake does the same thing anyway, because all the local brake is doing is it's reversing the current to the... It's actually a throttle lever, but it reverses the current to the traction motors. Getting some wheel slip again, so we'll just reduce the power. Sometimes it's not enough to trip the wheel slip indicator on the panel here. That only comes up if you spike. But you will see it happening. The wheel slip indicator only comes on basically if the power goes too high during wheel slipping. If you spot it happening and reduce your power early enough, you can avoid that entirely, which is good. So we're about halfway along this tunnel now. That's a false end that you see there. It will disappear again into the distance. We're not quite fixed that, although it's a minor complaint considering what the tunnels used to be like. So we're up to 50 now. And there's a 45 coming up at the end of the tunnel. Pulled the wrong lever there. It doesn't matter if you accidentally go into emergency mode though, because it'll just release as soon as you release the lever. It's not like a modern train where you trip half a dozen safety systems and the whole thing lights up like a bloody Christmas tree. You literally just move the lever back out of the emergency position and you're good. So really from once you can sort of see the end of the tunnel coming into view, minimum brake, I say minimum, not literal minimum, but a fairly low amount of brake force should do the job. I just want to see what the next signal said before I do the obvious here. Make sure I'm not going into a yellow. We're back to just getting the smoke out the lead unit. Oh, the second one's still working. We would not be accelerating if it wasn't. Just it seems to lose its special effects occasionally. What is encouraging though is how much more detailed and how much better the smoke effects are with each new pack that comes out. Because I suspect that's one of the things that's holding Steam back a bit, is making it look not shit. So it's come off the power there now, so we're up to the speed limit, and in fact it's going to keep crawling up slightly. Yeah, it's easing up over 60, so we'll just give it a little bit of minimum braking. See, the needles just take so long to go anywhere, and the gradient makes a difference as well. When you're going down a hill, the brakes, the train's pushing back against them, so you'll sometimes see the brake pressure doesn't actually seem to go as high, or it takes longer to go up. Likewise, going uphill, it all happens a lot faster because the speed that the brakes can take effect. Or the effectiveness of the brakes is affected by things like the gradient and the speed and the weight of the train and all sorts of things like that. But we're not here for a physics lesson, essentially. Uphill they'll work, they'll come on faster, come off slower. Downhill they'll come on slower, come off faster. Hey Chris, good to see you, man. Morning. Hope nobody's nursing any terrible hangovers or anything like that while I'm sitting here winding up a class 40 to full beans from time to time. So it's a lot of coasting actually for the second half. So there we go, with the minimum possible application of braking force, we're just holding at 60 going down this hill. Give it a little bit of local brake if you want. With minimum train brakes and the locomotive brake, you should be able to control the speed down here. I've no idea, any idea why the shunter service is limited to a few hours in the morning and only in Manchester. No, is the honest answer. They did say, it did say something on the developer stream the other day about their choice of the time of day. And the choice of time of day was deliberate because it's done at a time where, depending on what season you pick for the weather, you'll see them at all different sort of lighting conditions and things like that. I think he called it the sweet spot. So in summer it'll be lovely and bright and sunny. Spring and autumn it'll be moody and awesome lights and stuff. In winter it'll be pitch dark. Same reason that they did the newspaper train in the morning rather than an evening service. Now, I've got 2 miles to get down to 15 miles an hour and I'm going downhill, so I'm going to begin my train braking very early for this. As for why they're all down at the Manchester end, I honestly don't know, other than the only thing I can think of is they're maybe just keeping Leeds free for something else that they're going to add. They have suggested that, now there we go, half a mile and I've lost 5 miles an hour with the brakes on pretty harsh, so I'm going to just squeeze them on a bit more. In fact, I'm going to just put them on all the way because we need to be down to 15. They have said, I think, I wasn't paying attention all the way through it, but I think if I caught the drift right, there is still capacity within most of these timetables for them to add more stuff to it. So it could just be that Leeds is a bit barren at the moment, either because the current timetable and it would just be difficult to fit it in around signalling and stuff, I don't know. Or alternatively, it could be because they are planning to bring more content that will ultimately involve doing stuff up there. So we're now we're down to 35 with less than a mile to run. I'm going to release the train brake now because it takes bloody ages to release. So again, the locomotive end, the brakes are off, but they've got to come off all the way down the train, so it takes a while for the pressure to leave the system, and all the while that there's pressure there, of course, the brakes are acting to slow us down. And again, with more practice, I dare say you could get this down to one smooth, continuous braking movement, but I'm not that good, so I do it in 2 parts. And we've still got 15 miles an hour to lose. So what I want to try and do is lose the last 15 without having to have the brakes on too hard for too long, because I don't want to end up inadvertently stopping the train. Oh, I don't think I'm quite going to make it. So even starting the braking 2 miles early, it is really easy to misjudge that and get it completely wrong. I'm going to be just a couple of miles an hour over. But worse, my brakes are still on. I mean, they're released, but they're just taking a wee minute to come off. So a bit of power to counter that. You can kind of use the power against the brakes a little bit if you need to. You just have to watch not to make too much demand of it. So there we go. That wasn't too shit. We never went below 10. And the brakes are more or less off. Oh yeah, they've been saying from the get-go that Steam will happen. I think it's just a case of making it work and it not looking absolutely dreadful. Because when you think about the motion blur that we get on the wheels just now, think about all the moving parts on a steam train. I think they need to fix the motion blur first. I think that in the getting the steam effects, because if you look at the smoke coming out the top of this thing, looks awesome, and then go and look at the early ones like the 66 and the 43, where it looked a bit crap. I think they are getting closer to being able to do it, and I think most of the stuff that's probably stopping them now is to do with the look of it, because they have set themselves quite a high bar. It has to be said. And the scenery is occasionally looks a bit like sort of cardboard models you'd find on an architect's table, but the attention to detail within the trains themselves is absolutely incredible. Hi Grebo, good to see you, man, welcome. Unfortunately no, motion blur, that function has not been enabled on the console at all. It's about the only thing that we cannot do, because that's a software thing, that's within the code of the game itself, that's not a control thing. Okay, so let's get some power on. There we go, smoke's back on the rear unit again. Better just make sure I can see the signal. Yeah, it's green, we're good. I like just all the random bits of shit left lying next to the railway. I actually don't always notice as much of that stuff from up here in the cab. Right, so I do need to kind of half pay attention to my speed on the last stretch, because we are going down the way now. What I might do is, just to see it the other way, is there's a shorter version of this you can do on the eastbound. But, we'll see. Is that, is this Ashton-under-Lyme possibly that we're passing through now? I'm getting a little bit better at remembering where I am on the route. Yeah, Ashton-under-Lyme. can't remember the limit along here. 50, yeah. Of course it is. If the stretches of line that are semaphore signalled are generally 50. Can you? Control F2? Right, well I'm pressing Control F2 and literally bugger all's happening. Should probably be on the side of the train I can see. Control F2. Oh! Well, what do you know? It works. Okay. It still looks a bit crap. Alright, good shout that, man. No idea what difference it makes to performance, but well, there you go. I stand corrected. Quite happily as well. Nice one. That's an awesome find. Thank you, Chris Hart. So there you go. Everybody watching this later on. Control F2 does get rid of the motion blur on console. Oh! It does kind of... Uh-huh, okay. Oh, right, I'm not sure because I'll need to play with this for a wee while to see if I like it or not. It feels a bit stop motion-y. Almost. The fence feels like it's from a Wallace and Gromit film now. Oh, you can see far more yeah, you can see far more, oh, what do you call them, artifacts around the edges of the... Yeah, I'm not sure if I like it or not. I think I'll play about a bit more with that, but straight away I could see that there was a lot of artifacts around all the objects there. The train had all these horrible black lines. Don't know how well they showed up, as I say, on a 780 point or 740 point or whatever the hell it is stream, but immediately a lot of changes there that at best would take me a while to get used to. I've also not really been paying much attention to what's happening with the train, so I need to get down to 45 reasonably sharpish. Ghosting, yes. Hi DJ, welcome, good to see you. Yeah, I suspect the reason that they didn't add it in the settings is, as we've all just discovered, the ghosting and the artifacts that come along with it. If they don't advertise it and you discover it, they can always say, well, we didn't put it in there as an intentional feature, it's not how it's meant to be run. So, yeah, I probably understand entirely why they didn't. Right, I can't remember if there's another immediate reduction behind here or not. Yeah, 20. It makes everything look less blurred, but everything ends up having... The trees, funnily enough, I didn't notice a huge difference with. It's everything else. fence posts and stuff going by close to the train. But because it has to draw the high resolution texture instead of the blurry texture, everything starts to get all sorts of artifacts and ghosts and stuff appearing around it. It's I can't really tell, apart from the trees immediately next to your window look a bit sharper, but then all of a sudden there's all these horrible lines flying off the window frames, and it's a compromise either way, I think. You can turn it off for sharper looking textures but with lots of weird effects going on at high speed, or you can have the blurry textures and slightly less weird crap going on around the edges. So aiming for 20 miles an hour as we enter Miles Platting. This is where it gets interesting, is the run down to Manchester, because it's a very, very steep gradient, and although it's a 40 mile an hour limit, we're probably not going to want to do that because we've got to stop it again at the bottom. So let's pop some brake power back in just while the brakes finish coming off. Thanks, man. It's nice of you to say. I appreciate, always appreciate the feedback. Even if you think it's crap, I appreciate the feedback. Yeah, the signalling is described fairly well in the German manuals. Well, the routes for the manuals for the German routes. Ruhrsig and Main Spessart both have brilliant guides to Germany's signalling system. The instruction manual for Northern Transpennine is a bit rubbish, but there's a really good guide to signalling in the manual for BR Heavy Freight and for the Tees Valley. So we're about to go into this 40 zone now. Oh yeah, the frame rate counter. It doesn't seem to make much difference whether I've got it on and off. I'm still getting a steady 18.919 going around here. Oh, maybe a slight drop when I turn it off. Turn it on, goes back up to 18. It actually stays about the same. But I think that's why all the ghosting and stuff is going on. That's it basically taking shortcuts and not doing stuff. So I think it sacrifices some stuff. It sacrifices smoothness for resolution. Not smoothness, it sacrifices like fidelity of the, you know, stopping all the weird shit going on basically. I'm not a programmer, I don't know the language, but I understand what's going on there. In principle, I think. It's like it's trading off one for the other to make sure the frame rate stays the same whichever way you've got it set up. Probably be better to test that out on a high speed stretch of line though. I'll try and remember and do that at some point. So you see the speeds building up quite rapidly because I was fucking around with frame rate counters and things. You'll actually keep accelerating down here before you start braking. I should have had the brakes on way before now. Because what basically happens is you've got a runaway train now. You need to actually keep the brakes on from very, very early. I tend to have them on minimum application at the top of the slope, and then you find that they don't, the train will not roll away from you. So it is slowing down now. I don't think we're going to make the 15 miles an hour though, to be totally truthful. Oh, we might. Actually, we're fine. So, let the brakes out a little bit early, because I don't want to come to a halt outside the station. And you can always just give them a squeeze back on if you feel that you need a bit more. What I'm basically trying to avoid doing is having them on full service for any length of time, because that's when they take ages to fully release. And yeah, more or less made it. Put it this way, you could have blamed that on a calibration error on the speed measuring equipment and got away with it. And the ground signal just in front is white, so we're okay to enter the station, or to proceed beyond the shunt signal anyway. Overcharging doesn't seem to make much difference in how quickly the brakes release, to be honest. That's fine, they're coming off. And then the biggest risk now is rolling past the red signal at the end of the platform. We don't want to stop too early. The brakes are releasing really slowly and overcharging doesn't help. The problem is that it's really easy to do it too late and roll on beyond the red. But again, this is one of these things, you do it a few times, you'll get better at it. But you've only got about a 15-yard window to stop in, because you have to stop beyond a certain point, but you can't go beyond the signal. And it is really, really fussy about how close you get, but as you can see, it's such a long train, there is no overhang. You have to get it all the way on. Which means, it does mean just crawling through the station at 5 miles an hour basically to make sure that you don't cock it up. just make sure I've got the train brake control active. There's more than once I've got to this point and then it's been the locomotive brake which does absolutely bugger all really on its own. Just because the curvature, excuse me, the curvature generates friction. You just need a little little squeeze of the throttle as we go around. I've no idea what practical purpose this gantry thing over us serves. Unless it's maybe part of the roof structure. And the signal is really unhelpfully it's hidden behind the canopy as well. I don't think I'm close enough. So see, even at 15 yards, it wants me to be closer. I think about 4 or 5 is the furthest away you can be. So we'll creep up a bit. Oh shit. So you can see my wheel slip indicator came on there because I overcooked it a bit. I think I might have broken it. Ah, fudge. Yeah, very real risk with these trains is overloading the motor and oh, we better stick some brakes on, eh? You just need to wait for the system to reset itself like that. There you go. It does. It sets itself eventually, and I don't think any amount of messing around with the controls does anything. So the brakes are off, but we're on a slight uphill gradient here, so you have to be really careful, because there's not much of a gap between not enough power to move and oh shit, I blew it again. And you've got that tiny little window to stop in with 1,800 tons of train behind you. You could probably do that in about an hour and 10 minutes without all that messing about at slow speed. But we still got there before the next stage of this train's journey, so we weren't like unduly late. Let's just hop out. It's got its original plate. It's still stuck to the door. That's kind of cool. So I got the motion blur currently turned on or off. I don't know. Nothing comes up to tell me if I've got it active or not. So yeah, much longer seeming train when you've got to walk the length of it. It goes all the way down to the end of the platform. Absolute beast of a thing to drive, but actually pretty good fun. I quite enjoyed that. So I think that's probably where I'm going to call this one. I'm actually pretty hungry, so seems like a sensible place to stop it. Still plenty of stuff to look at though on both BR Heavy Freight, and still some stuff on Tees Valley that I've not looked at either. So there will definitely be more to come from me even over the coming days and weeks. In the meantime, I really enjoyed driving that. I hope you guys enjoyed watching it. Thank you all very much, and I will see you again soon.